treating them with respect, but also pointing out what they're doing is wrong. You have to be open to taking a risk. I'm here to help the kids. I think part of it is having an open mind to change.
Welcome back, investor. We've got another episode of Passive Income Adventures. If this is your first time joining us, my name is Emma. I'm here with Mark Bullock. He is a personal finance coach. I'll let you tell a little bit more about that. And my 10th grade science teacher. So I am super excited about this interview today because I think that you've had such an interesting career with so many opportunities to teach and do so many interesting things. So I know you're going to have some amazing stories today. So thank you for joining us, Mark.
Thank you for having me and inviting me to speak with you.
Yeah, I still want to call you Mr. Bullock, but I'm trying to get over.
I actually do the same myself, and it just happens. And having former students come into Denver and then coming and visit, we're talking about students who are in their 50s. Okay, Mr. Bullock, how you doing?
Yeah.
Right. You can just call me Mark if you want. That's how it goes.
Old habits die hard. It's like calling your mom by her first name. But I think you and I reconnected. I'm trying to remember what year it was. It was right when Major League Rugby had announced that they were going to go public announcement, and you had brought your team to Austin to play a game against the women's team. And I think we were at the same tournament. And that was the first time we'd seen each other in person, I think, since high school.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That was about 2018.
Okay.
And we were developing the professional rugby team and professional rugby league, and Austin was part of that. And you had come up from, I want to say San Marcos, is that right?
Yeah, playing with the San Marcos team.
And you were going to play rugby, and you were there. And I actually had brought my young son who had just broken his nose and had two giant black eyes. And then you were going to play wing, which wasn't a position you normally played. And that was when we had reconnected, if you will, from, I don't know, 20 years or so prior. And that was actually quite an exciting time. And I still have the photo of us there.
Yep. So, I injured my AC joint. Like I had a broken wing for the rest of the day. So that was my first. All the other players were like, oh, it took you 20 years to finally get initiated to that joint. We all have it on both sides, but I felt like I accomplished something that day. But
no, it was a great day.
Now let's back up in time a little bit more. Tell me about your career in general before, say, 2020, or I guess it was 2017, because I remember I was just graduating college, actually, because I was a late go back to college. And I asked you, I was like, what does the league need? And you said investors and marketers. I was like, I don't know if I can invest. Let's see how this is going, but I can definitely market. And you introduced me to the Austin general manager, and he hired me as a marketer. And then later, when we moved to Utah, I ended up investing with the Utah Warriors. They seemed very well organized and staying power. So I just remember that. So you told me, here's what they need and here's what I can do. But let's back up to years before that, when you first got involved in teaching, your coaching career. And because I think that's relevant to what you're doing right now, your passion always in educating people, whether it's science class or the business of rugby. Hey, let me teach you how rugby works, all of that. So I think that really defines what you're doing now as an educator.
Yeah, I think actually in retrospect, as I look back at my career, I think one of the key things is I look out to see what needs to be done, and then I try to figure out how to do it.
Yeah.
And I graduated from university and then started teaching and began teaching and coaching. When I first started, I taught a lot, but I taught students who were, you might say, antisocial students. They were students who were not able to stay in school, or they were in school and this was their last opportunity. In fact, one of the programs I worked on was called Opportunity Program. But kids who were kicked out of all their classes and so forth. And that was a good opportunity for me to learn about people and students who struggled, and really an opportunity to explore, like, how can I help them so that they can be successful? And a lot of that had to do with structure and with the most important thing, respecting the kids that what they're doing. And when if you would misbehaved or did things wrong, it's not like coming unglued at them. It's like treating them with respect, but also pointing out what they're doing is wrong. What ended up happening is I ended up having a really good relationship with them. And that served me well. And actually, ultimately, when I relocated to Colorado, I was teaching and they were like, oh, we want you to teach this course with these students. I started the course and it was like, this is a waste of time. I'm trying to teach them how to read, write, do arithmetic, basic stuff that ninth and 10th graders might be doing if they're behind. And these students were all behind, but they have bigger issues than that. And
Mm.
so I just look at this is a waste of their time, waste of my time. So I basically put together a program of how basically there's a wilderness program. And I suggested to the school that I take these students, we go out in the woods and we learn how to work and we do rehabilitation. Originally, I wanted to do logging, but they didn't do much logging and, or not logging, but, you know, tree work.
Of
And
course.
so I got these kids and we went over and rehabilitated work in the national forest. And these kids, if they were in school, they would get in trouble almost constantly all day. They would be in the halls and they'd create conflict. So they'd come in the morning, we'd hop in a van, we'd drive up to the mountains, we'd work all day, we'd drive back, we'd go home. And I had kids in that class that the first semester came to school about 5 times. They never missed a day in the program. So that was just one of those steps of there was a need. I'm willing to take a risk. Fortunately, the school district was willing to take a risk. And the same thing happened actually at your school, Kentwood. We were teaching, and there were 3 of us teaching the same biology class.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why are we all doing the same thing, lecturing on the same thing? Why don't we team teach it when we're doing something that's in common? One teacher can work on that, the other 2 teachers can work on labs or whatever. And so we ended up providing an opportunity where we would combine all 3 classes, say period 1, and one teacher might do the lecture, demonstration, or whatever, and then we would break into our lab groups and do that. That was the start of, oh, how do I change things?
Yeah. I
And
was in that
what,
class. We
yeah,
would
what
go in
can
the
we do?
auditorium and we would get I remember you said the other teacher loved microbiology, and and so he really would geek out on that with us, and then you all had different strengths, and I remember talking about that with you because it was nothing like I had ever done before. Maybe a little bit in elementary school where one teacher would teach math and one would teach English, so it was maybe back to that old pattern where we're cheating, but yeah, it was really fun because I feel like I got to experience the strengths of all 3 teachers, and it made the whole experience unusual, memorable, and frankly, just more enjoyable as a student.
Yeah, it was just a different approach to that. And again, as you go through education, you start looking at things and it's, I'm doing this, it doesn't seem to be working.
Mhm.
How can we adjust or change? And so a lot of people don't like change. And you have to be open to that. You have to be open to taking a risk. And that's part of it is I take a risk and you go, it might not work. If it doesn't work, I make an adjustment.
Mhm.
I change it. I massage it, if you will. And I think those are some of the key things. So I went through as an educator thinking about those things in terms of how I teach. And part of that's like, how am I going to help students to be the very best? So when I relocated to Colorado, after I taught the students who were in their last ropes, I got back into my field, which is science. And as I was doing science, I started thinking, like a lot of times students just want to be, I hate to say mediocre, but they don't really want to push what they're doing. And so again, I was like, I feel like I'm working really hard to motivate students and they're just want to get through the day. So then I was like, how can I change that? And so I alternated how I taught my courses in terms of what I expected the students. And you have to make this standard. So let's say it's 70%. You have to make this. If you don't make this, you're getting your work back and you have to do it till you get to this. And they're like, why? I go, I don't care. You have to do it. You have to meet this standard and you have to meet 100% correct, 100% complete, 100% comprehensive. Comprehensive gave me leeway for, say, special ed students and so
Mhm.
forth. Is this what you have to meet? You have to do this. So at first there was a resistance and it gave me, I had a lot of work, but what ended up happening is students started turning their work in, started getting it. If they didn't do it right, they got it back. I didn't care how they came up with their responses. You have to do this and it has to be right. Oh, you didn't put a period. This is not right. You got to be 100% correct. So that was the motive behind that, but it was also an exam. I go, if you don't meet the standard in the exam, you have to do the example and you have to come in before school or during my prep or lunchtime. So what happened is, and I told him, you can't fail this class if you do what's required.
Okay.
And you're going to have to meet these standards. And what happened is the majority of the students do that. The students who might not have done that, where students had other issues going on in their life. Oftentimes they had attendance issues or they had family issues or living out of their car or whatever the case may be. But it changed the mindset of what was going on. Now, other teachers thought that was crazy because there was a lot of extra work, but it was like, I'm here to help the kids. I'm not here to separate the wheat from the chaff and go, you're the losers and you're the winners. It's my job is to teach you and to help you reach this standard. And the same in my chemistry class. I had so many, my chemistry classes were massive because they, I think, knew that if they did all this stuff, they'd be successful. Plus, I don't just talk chemistry when I'm in the class. I talk obviously rugby because that's a big part of my background. That
Yeah.
comes back now to you played rugby, your sister played rugby, but part of that comes back to when I was playing rugby, I was going, why don't we have a school club that feeds into our men's club?
Yeah.
I was like, I don't know why. I'll start one. So I
No
started a team.
nobody had nobody and that was risky. Okay, I don't wanna gloss over your football coaching because you coached a very high level high school football team that was extremely successful year after year after year of that program. And then I, even at the time, thought it was very risky to be coming in and saying, we want to have a rugby club. It wasn't even a sport and get kids who were getting scholarships out of this football program and then play rugby as a club activity. And I, even at the time, I remember saying, tell me about this. Tell me why. Tell me it's a lot of work and you're not getting any extra kudos or you're paid extra to bleed for this club. I think that just speaks to something about the way that you work and then playing for you. Cause I didn't, obviously, I'm not on the boys football team, but you let me come out and play on the boys rugby team. And the way that you are able to motivate the kids to want to perform for you without coddling and also without being aggressive. You just had this way of being like, this is the standard. I guess that's what you just described. This is the standard. And if you perform to it, then you'll be successful. And there was never any yelling. You really struck a great balance with ours. Tell me about, like you said, you have this rugby club that you're trying to be able to feed into these adult clubs, but nobody else had done that.
Yeah, it was all strange. But again, it comes back to that. Oh, I see a need. How do I meet the need? How do I solve this problem? And then I pretty much jumped into it. And it's interesting because I've started a couple of rugby programs in each program. The first year we're mediocre, and the second year we win the state championship.
We're
And the same,
sad.
and then
I always laugh. People are like, oh, you played rugby. I was like, I was never any good. I played on the first year of a girls' high school team when I was a senior, and then scattered here and there. And then when I was an adult, I was never any good. But you actually ended up turning out some really champion level teams. But I never had the privilege of playing on.
that was even when I was a kid, where just like my colleague and I are going like, why isn't there a USA under 19 team like everywhere else in the world?
Oh, yeah.
And then we were like, whoa, let's start one. And we got a lot of resistance by USA Rugby, the governing body of rugby, but we just went full speed ahead and ended up starting a team, going to New Zealand that first year,
Mhm.
trained for 3 weeks, et cetera, et cetera. And now the USA has a USA under 20 team and they compete worldwide. And of course, we played a couple World Cup, but that was another one of those, why don't we have this? Let's figure it out. And interesting enough, I think that's carried on throughout my career. I became a school principal. And when I was a school principal, I'm like going, why are we teaching basic math to ninth and 10th graders? They've been doing this since fifth or sixth grade. We need to change this. And the teachers, oh, we can't do that. And I'm like, let me ask you this. I go, again, didn't really know what I asked them, but it was like, if we teach them algebra, there'll be a reason for them to know decimal fractions. There'll be a purpose because right now there's not a purpose for what they're doing.
Mm.
And if you do this kind of thing, you give them a purpose for that. Of course, there was a lot of resistance, but partway through the semester, teachers started to try that because, of course, they're frustrated because the kids aren't doing their work or they're not doing what happened. And then suddenly they were on board. It was, oh, yeah, we can teach them this because now they have to bring these other skills that they haven't, quote, mastered at that point in time. And so that was a change. And then another thing happened. I was like, and we're in a rural district in Vail, Colorado Mountains. And I'm like, why do we have kids getting on a bus at 6 a.m. in the morning to get to school? Because we're going to start at 7,
Mhm.
right? And they're coming from way far away. I go, this is stupid. And I go, all the research says for teenagers in particular, that's better for them to start later in the day and the younger kids start. So
Yeah.
that started a 2-year process of me convincing the school district and the school board and the bus drivers and all the people involved that we needed to have a logical schedule that actually followed what the research is telling us. And that was another one where I'm just going, why are we doing this? This doesn't make sense. Kids are getting on the bus at 6 in the morning or 5:45. I go, that's dumb. So that's just been my whole world of, oh, what can we do here? And ultimately, I requested, and that's a long time ago, 2006 or so, 2005, to develop a rugby program in the city of Glendale, build a rugby stadium and blah, blah, blah. And ultimately that became a professional rugby program, which
Yeah.
you alluded to earlier, which is now Major League Rugby. And part of it was I kept looking for higher level competition. And then that led us to potential professionalism, which ultimately led to professional league in the US. And then our team also competed in the league in South America called the Super Rugby Americas. So we'd go down and play Uruguay, Chile, Argentina. But all of those things just because it's like you look out there again and you go, oh, what do we need and what we can do? And I recently, probably not quite 2 years ago, year and a half, retired from that, but I really wasn't ready to retire. And so then that led me to some other things. So part of that retirement is like you're meeting with your financial planner about your
Yes.
retirement account, what you're doing and so forth. And so as part of that, my financial planner is like, she does all her stuff. And then she calls me and says, hey, would you like to like come into business with me or help me out? And I go, I never really thought about that. And she goes, you're passionate about things. She goes, but her big thing was, I can learn a lot from you about your leadership,
Mhm.
and I can help you learn about financial planning and, if you will, passive income, et cetera. And I'm like, that's interesting. I never thought about that. And so then that led to further conversations about, in effect, coming back to education and, in my view, educating people about finances and what they could do. And so that kind of led to this, my interest, if you will, in the fact that there's a lot of information out there that common people in the US just don't know about
Yeah.
in terms of their finances. And then, of course, obviously these the possibilities and opportunities. So yeah, that's how I went from educator, coach, and I'm still coaching. To be fair, I'm just coaching a high school team. And I just got back coaching USA West out in Tampa, Florida. So I'm a hand in everything, right? I'm also
Yeah.
teaching skiing at Copper Mountain. So it's like, got to keep busy, right? Because some people like, what's your future? And I said, I'm not really ready to be, quote, retired. I need to keep doing things that are rewarding to myself
Yeah.
and are stimulating. And part of that, I think, is the stimulation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
So I've been talking a lot.
okay. I'm actually thinking about your parents because they were athletes and growing up in a family where they're athletes, that's a short-lived career as an athlete. And so you probably got the opportunity, I don't know, we've never talked about this before. You tell me for the opportunity to watch them or even whether they did it when you could remember or before and then just told you about it, having to figure out their career after the athletic career. How much did that play into your flexibility and willingness to get in there and try new things? Because you don't have to pick a career at 18 or 20. As soon as you get to college, you have an opportunity to iterate on yourself and pursue interesting things.
That's an interesting answer. It's a great question. And to be fair, I don't know that I really saw that because they were professional ice skaters and they skated until I was probably a first grader.
Mhm.
Okay. And then they settled down out of go to school. Then they joined the workforce. They were in the workforce, but a different way, right?
Yeah.
So they joined the regular workforce. And then I just observed them working and being like a kid. I think really for me personally, it's like going through university. It's fun. Not sure what I want to do, like most people. And some people know immediately, I'm going to be this, I'm going to do this. And I wasn't sure. And really what happened is just by chance, because I competed athletically, but by chance, I ended up helping a middle school, a boarding school, helping them coach. And then I realized that I quite like that. And
Yeah.
that sort of led me in that direction. It wasn't a direction that I really had formatted in my head. And it was like, I had this experience and it's, oh, I like this experience. And then another experience was doing research in Glacier House Park. And it was like, oh, I kind of doing that. But it doesn't pay the money right now. So I ended up in the direction that I ultimately ended up in.
Yeah. And finding that fulfillment, like you're talking about with financial, you've got to figure out how to pay for it. As I said, the theme of the show is like, what do you want your lifestyle to look like? You got to figure out how to pay for it. So sometimes you're doing something that's fun and interesting and fulfilling, but like you said, it's just not paying the bills. Well, you can start to think about, okay, how can I pay the bills? And when I have that foundational level of income or wealth built over time, then you can really release yourself and say, okay, now what do I want to do? Whether it pays or not, I can really explore what this looks like. I think I had a similar kind of example with my dad was a high school math teacher and high school English teacher. And I've never met anybody who taught both of those subjects. So from a young age, knowing that you can be excellent at more than one subject. He actually had a minor in physics in college, but he never
Mhm.
taught that. And then he changed careers because it wasn't paying the bills, but he ended up teaching software development and coding for Boeing for his entire career because he took those math teacher skills and those educational skills and
Mhm.
basically went in and was teaching all the new Boeing hires how to program in COBOL. And then he became a programmer himself for the last part of his career. And I just remember seeing and hearing about his evolution from high school teacher to coding teacher to then coder, and just knowing that skills translate. Like people
Mhm.
talk a lot about sports, how you can learn a lot about life from sports, but just being able to see that career wise, like you're retiring from a public service to then a private business. And then you're figuring out your financial plan so you can retire from that thinking, oh, this is interesting too. And at no point did you ever think, oh, no, I'm not a finance guy. Like you have the confidence to be able to say, I have relevant skills to be able to apply over here because of your experiences with
Mhm.
career changes and sports equals life type of analogies. I think that makes people better at thinking bigger, thinking more creatively, and being able to draw connections through that laptop and research. I don't know. Am I rambling here? You tell me.
No, I think part of it is having an open mind
Mm,
to change. And like your dad is an example of that change from, I want to be a teacher, but I need more financial security, so to speak. And one of my climbing colleagues at Liberty High School, he was an engineer for also for Boeing.
yeah.
And he discovered that really wasn't his calling. Teaching was his calling. And he became a teacher and became quite good at it. And so I think part of that is, I don't know, having, again, being able to take a risk to go, this is what I really want to do.
Yeah.
And I may or may not make X amount of dollars or whatever financially, but this is what I want to do.
Hmm.
And so I think you often go through that and you have to make decisions, obviously, based on your family and so forth. That's a whole part of it. And there's the financial parties. Like, how do I do this? And when I'm looking at the direction I'm going now, there's two things. One is I'm semi-retired, so I don't have to go get clients.
Yeah.
It's okay. I'm taking a break now because I'm taking this course to increase my knowledge of finances and so forth.
Hmm.
And this is what I'm doing. Oh, and by the way, I'm also coaching his team. So I've got some stuff going on over here, learning about those kids. So I can, if you will, blend those and I'm not in a hurry. And that's the best part about my situation now. I already have finances. And so it's like, I don't have to rush around. I can take my time and I can go, okay, now I'm working at this particular situation. And the other part, again, part of the stimulation is I'm learning new things,
Yeah.
right? And that's of value. And I'm almost as old as dirt. So it's like I got to learn new things. And so that helps me stay stimulated and motivated.
Yeah, it's people always say, how do you stay young? You got to keep your body fit, keep your mind fit, and learning new things and continually figuring out like, how do I have value? I don't think we can underestimate that. But tell me about tell me about working with people who are getting close to retirement, getting ready to retire. That's like what you're working on right now. Because a lot of the friction that I feel is exactly what you're talking about. People will hear my message of retire early, passive income, have adventures. And yet they somehow will say, I don't want to retire early and lose my purpose. When my dad retired, even at 65, he didn't do anything and then he lost his purpose. And so I hear these stories and I think to myself, I mean, we retired when we were 48. I think my husband,
Mhm.
yeah, my husband was 48. And I'm like, "Oh, I don't feel like we lost our purpose. I feel like we're doing more now than we've ever done before." Similar to what you're talking about. It's like, one, we went out and we traveled, we took some time off, we weren't making any money. We built a business foundationally where we weren't having to rush around, chase for clients because we didn't need the money. And then occasionally, like, I like giving piano lessons to the neighbor kids because it's something that's so different and stimulates such a different part of my brain to really think, wait, I have to now turn off what I was doing before and completely switch gears into this other thing. And I've never taught piano before. So, how to translate what I can do over to how to teach, it's fascinating. So, do you have people who say those kinds of things? No, I don't want to retire and lose my purpose.
You bring up a good point is that I have friends of mine who retired and moved to Bend, Oregon, and I brought in he was a contractor and carpenter and so forth, and I brought all my tools, I'm like that, and I think I'm gonna do this and this. And he goes, "But," he goes, came down here and I started to do this, and now I'm busy doing things that they enjoy."
Mm,
Right? And that could be golf, it could be playing pickleball, it could be hiking or whatever they do. And he goes, "I haven't picked up a hammer
yeah.
since I've been down here." He goes, "But my mind was,
Yeah.
I'm not ready to retire," which is just what you said. I'm not ready to be retired. And once he got there, it was like, "Oh, I like this." I have another colleague I coach with watching the same thing. I'm done. And now he enjoys his time riding his mountain bike and doing different kind of things. And you're an example of that. It's like you're as busy you've ever been, but my guess is you're more content
Yes.
because you're not feeling stressed about, I have to do this. And one of the things that I'm finding is that, and I'm trying to help people, but one of the things I'm finding is, of course, I have a workout meter and so forth, and it tells me this. And every morning it gets up and it says, your stress level is 0 or just really low. Right. And I'm looking at that thinking like, yeah, but when I was running a professional rugby program, my stress level wasn't low. Right.
Mhm.
Because there's always all this stuff going on. And so I think that's one of the benefits. The people that I really want to talk to are the younger people who are in their 20s or 30s
Mm,
so that I can go, what are you doing for your future?
yeah.
And do you know this? And because if you think about like most of us, our parents, I shouldn't say most of us, but it would not be uncommon for your parents when you're a little kid go, okay, Emma, you got to save your money. And maybe you have a piggy account, you're putting pennies in and so forth, and you're saving coins and your
Mhm.
parents coins. And what's happening is they're subtly telling you have to save because that may not be what you're being taught in school, right? Because they're busy teaching you other stuff. So you're learning to save. And so you get older and what do? You open a savings account. So you have a savings account at the bank and you're earning 2% interest, right? Now, you might go, oh, that's pretty good. I'm earning 2% interest. But then if you know anything about stocks and real estate, if you will, you could be earning more interest than that. And
Mhm.
you could be compounding your interest, et cetera, and rule of 72, et cetera.
Yes. I didn't hear
Then
about the rule of 72 until I was 40.
exactly. Thank you very much. Those are the kind of things where for me too, it's cool. All this time, my credit card, oh, they're compounding my interest, the rule of
Yeah.
72, the little buggers.
I didn't know the difference between how to calculate compounded interest versus simple interest, and that those rates are not the same thing. And they explained it to me like Celsius and Fahrenheit. And I was like, oh, like 10th grade science class. I didn't know that wasn't the same interest rate. And I think I didn't learn that till I was about 40.
Exactly. So you hit what my passion is about this. And it's exactly what you just said. You didn't know this until later. Same with me, right? I go through life. I'm like, oh yeah, I got some money in the savings account. I
Mhm.
think that's good. Then I go, oh, I should invest in this thing here because they're environmentally sensitive and socially sensitive. This is back a long time ago. Now it's a popular thing, but then it wasn't. But I didn't really know any of the stuff that was really going on. I just did it and I didn't have anybody telling me, oh, you should look at this and you should do this. And oh, by the way, if you invest in stock and you look at the stock market, the average return is 9%. Some of those groups make 25% over a shorter amount of time. But if you're in for the long haul, this is a good thing because stock market has crashed, but it always goes up. Doesn't matter who's in, doesn't matter who's being elected, doesn't matter if it's Republican or Democrat, it's
Mhm.
basically the same.
Didn't
I
learn
didn't,
about trend lines until I was in
yeah,
my 30s. So
I
you're
knew
talking
that.
about ups and downs and volatility, but that trend line calculation was something I took in a statistics class in my 30s. Like, why
Exactly.
didn't I know this?
Exactly. So consequently, your passion that I'm hearing from you is
Mm.
my passion is I didn't know this. I should have known this. It would have been nice if I'd had an advisor and if it's someone who taught me this.
Yeah.
So really my more interest is helping, if you will, young people, but I'd say people of the middle class to be able to go, here's how you can help yourself. Now, number one is how do we get out of debt? Because if you look at debt, 48% of people in America are in massive debt and so forth.
Well,
And,
I have massive debt to be fair, but it's like commercial real estate.
but
I
that,
put that a different category, but yeah, consumer debt is almost always very dangerous for a
yeah.
family.
And if you look at yourself, your kind of debt is different because you're making investments, so forth, which ultimately results in income. But the majority of people, like if I were to go look at all of the players on a rugby team, I'd go, oh, you own this, you have this debt, you have this debt. Here's the income you have. And part of that is, I think, looking at how can the real goal is what's your financial independent number that you want?
Yes.
Where do you want to be financially independent? That's just what you're providing. 48, I
Yes.
want to retire. So one of my young rugby players, he's not that young now, but he was young to me, but he's in the oil industry. He's in
Mhm.
Texas. He's making crazy money. And it's what's your plan? What if you lose your job? What's your plan? Where are you putting your money? Like all of those kinds of things are out there. It's, oh, he said, oh, if I would just want to buy a truck, I just take this cash and buy the truck. I go, what if, it's like, what if you have a plan about that? What about your children? Do you have life insurance? Do you have something to cover this? Part of, for me is like also talking to people is, do you really need life insurance? At a young age, you might. At an old age, you might not.
Mhm.
So I'm in the, if you don't need it, don't get it, right? If you need it, okay, at this time, because as you get, most people, when we're young, we have a lot of debt. As we get older, ideally, we start to eliminate that. And then I don't need quote life insurance, but I need it when I'm young because I have these things. I have a house, I have a mortgage. I get older, I paid off my mortgage, but all of those kind of things. But nobody knows about that.
No, it's just basic finances.
Oh,
Well,
you say that, but people don't know that.
should be basic finances. And I think I'm thinking back, this is a lot of high school flashing back right now, but I think it was in 8th grade. Remember the name of it. It's like the junior achievement. It was some sort of business education program for high school or middle schoolers. And I took that in middle school. And then in high school, I took the computers and business class because
Yeah.
I thought when they would say this business thing, because my sister, Jessica, would always tell she was very into making sure she managed her money well, very entrepreneurial. And she would guide me, you need to take this junior achievement, you need to take this computers and business.
Mhm.
And I thought in high school that they were teaching me that stuff. But then I was like, no rule of 72, no compounding interest. And they would talk about compounding interest in math class, but never how I could use that in investing. We didn't talk about investing at all,
Mhm.
ever. And so looking back and thinking, I tried as a student to take good advice and take business classes, and it really wasn't that helpful.
Yeah, I agree with you totally on that. It's just, again, people know you talk to somebody and they're like, oh, I have a $50,000 in my savings account. And I'm like, what? You have
I
that in
have
your
to find
savings
this
account?
out a lot.
You have
Yes.
that in your savings account.
Some people tell me they had $750,000 in the savings
Or
account,
or
and
that.
it's happened more than once.
Okay. But I'm dealing with different people.
Yeah,
It's
it doesn't matter if you have a lot of money, if you don't
no.
know these basics, the zeros change, but the metrics don't change until they figure out like, "Oh, these kind of basic concepts that we're talking about aren't so basic," and they just keep doing the same thing and keep
That's
saving
right.
up, and they're 50 and suddenly they realize they don't know what they're doing.
You can earn $40,000 in so many years, or you can earn $2,560,000
Yeah.
in 40 years because, and all you've done is moved it from this pot into this different pot.
Yep.
Now, there may be more risk, but over time, let's say over 40 years, things are, as you said, the trend is going to be this. And
Mhm.
so you're going to end up in a whole different situation. But what my experience is that a lot of people, they just don't know that. And it's part of that. Your mom told you to save, your dad told you to save. And so you're saving, you have it in a savings account. And that makes sense. But then you and I might be going, except that you're earning less than the cost of living.
Mm.
So you could do something different and you could go into stocks. You could go into real estate. There's one of those things where it's the value of the land that you bought is generally not going to go down because there's only that lot. It's
Mhm.
not going to grow. The lot's not grow. It's going to be the same. And so there's value in that, right? But oftentimes we don't think that way. Oh, there's the value of that lot, whatever it happens to be.
Yeah.
And that's the same with if you look at stocks and bonds and different kind of investments, it's like there's value in that. Like everything, there's risk, but you have to be open to what that kind of risk would be.
It's more of a
Some
short-term risk though, because what you're talking about is
That's right.
that short-term risk. It is riskier than a savings account. But over time, I find it's de-risked and becomes pretty in line with very low risk types of investing if you have the long term. This is not a short-term game. The stock market's not a short-term game. Real estate's not a short-term game.
Yep.
People are looking if they don't know this stuff when they're 20 or 30, then they start getting risky trying to do it short term when they're in their 40s because they feel like the clock is ticking.
But it's a really good thing that you just said. Like they want to get risky, but then it's like the woman that I work with, well, I don't know, work is work, but she's my advisor, if you will, because I work my own. But one of the things she said goes, if you are retiring at 60, are you planning on living an additional 20 years in today's world? Yeah, I am. Then you could actually take that money, your quote, retirement money, and you could put it in because people will tell you need to be more conservative as you get older. But if you're going to be here for 20 years, why not put it into, say, stocks and bonds or whatever?
Mhm.
Because you get 20 years we're talking about, right? So we're not talking about in 2 years, I need to take that money out. That's a different thing, right?
Yeah.
And that's one of those things, again, I never thought about it. It's, oh, that makes sense. If I'm talking to a potential client, it's when you want to retire. "Oh, I want to retire at 60. Okay. But are you going to live? How long do you think you'll live after that? Of course, that's always a roll of dice. But traditionally, you go, oh, I've got another X number of years. So
Yeah.
then you go, how would you like to invest your funds? Thinking in terms of more long term than short term.
Yeah. Nobody plans on retiring at 60 and dying at 65. I think it's a reasonable assumption to say that barring an accident or crazy illness, that we should all plan on living until about 80.
Yeah.
That's pretty reasonable.
Yep.
And if we're thinking not even that long term, then there might be an issue. But you said a lot of things there that really apply to pretty much every investor, whether they're wealthy, whether they're brand new and broke, whether they're old, whether they're young, whether they're risk averse or more open and tolerant to risk, just some fundamental investing of knowledge there. So describe to me your ideal client in your current business, because I'm hearing you say that you like working with young people. What I've noticed, like when I was working with the younger athletes, in Rugby, Utah, they were go-getters, very hard workers, but they didn't make a lot of money. Rugby is not a high-paying sport for the athletes, and so they were very aware they had this short time clock ticking on this athletic career because an injury could be gone tomorrow.
Mhm.
They never really felt like this is my long-term plan, and they were trying to think long-term. They're not my ideal customer. My ideal customer is middle-aged, accredited investor, wants to retire at 50, 55. They gotta figure
Yeah.
out how to live between 50 and half when they can get at their retirement accounts. That's really who we work with, but I just really love just for free mentoring the younger kids and just trying to help them think more long term. But in your business, you're in a little bit different demographic than I am with who you work with. So describe who that is, your client, and then maybe describe who you just like working with for free.
I think the 30 to 50-year-old
Hmm.
would be the standard client. Ideally, they are married, they may have children,
Hmm.
they may have a mortgage, and they have a job. Those would be the key people that I'd be looking at. You might run into the really young ones, but that's the key group is that demographic. A lot of time they don't have the knowledge. Part of it, how to use your money is really the key to this, right? How do you want to use your money? And then it becomes, how do we get to this point? How do you get to financial independence? When would you like to get there? How are we going to get there? What do we have to do? Is there this particular employment? Is that the only employment? Do you need a side gig to help you get rid of debt? Part of that is, how do you get rid of debt? Because that's another part of it. Do you do debt stacking? A lot of people don't know that, right? So it's, oh, let's do it this way. Because they'll have ideas. People, oh, take this, the one that's got a high percentage, the one that has the most money. There's all kinds of ways to go about doing that. But it's like, how can you eliminate debt over time so that you benefit? And what is it you can do that will benefit you to become, if you will, financially independent? And that might be, as you say, retiring at 48, or I don't want to retire at 48, but I'm able to. So now
Yes.
you have choices.
Yes.
And so that's one of the key factors in my thinking is now you have a choice, because before you think about this, you don't necessarily have a choice.
Yeah.
And again, it's like you you look at people and or I say clients, and it's like they have stuff all over the place. And you have all these jobs. What if you put everything in one? Like,
Like their rollover
yeah,
accounts. Yeah.
exactly. And so I think that's the group that I want. I guess it's like teaching in that you want to get the aha moment, like the rule of 72. People are like, oh my God, I didn't know that. That's the aha moment. Or they may have an idea, but like you were talking about simple interest versus compound interest. Most people don't automatically think compound interest. So for me, it's reaching those clients in that group. Now, personally beneficial for me, somebody in the 50 to 60, the high end, and they've got all kinds of money, blah, blah, blah. Financially, that would probably be more of a benefit for me,
Mhm.
but that's not what's driving me. I'm not driven by, I can generate X amount of income. What's driving me is I can help you eliminate the issues that I had of the things I didn't know.
Yeah.
And that's one of those things. I just go, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And it's, oh, we've got Social Security or we've got a pension because I work for this particular company. Okay. And then they decide to get rid of the pension and now you're out of luck or so on and so forth. And so there's, I think, more opportunities for people out there. And it's like, how do you present that to them?
Yeah. I think when I first started helping other families invest, I was just looking for families that looked kind of like our family because it's relatable and like, this is me. And I'm looking for people similar to me to be able to help. But what I discovered, I think with the younger athletes actually is where I really learned this. I'm thinking of a particular conversation where he was talking about how he was willing to work hard, he was willing to hustle, but then he started talking about the good deeds he wanted to do, the nonprofit that he wanted to start, and he wanted to support some aging parents. He wasn't talking about getting rich and driving Lamborghinis. He was talking about becoming wealthy so that he could go out and build these nonprofits and help other people. And I remember sitting back at that restaurant just thinking, these are the kind of people that I'm helping who are going to go pay it forward. And for free, I'm just mentoring young people. But then I realized my 50-ish year olds who are wealthy and looking to retire a few years earlier, they are doing the same thing. They're going out and they're building nonprofits and they're volunteering in their communities and they're being better grandparents, better parents.
Mhm.
And I thought that was like a beautiful moment opened up to me that I thought wealthy people make the rich richer. I
Mhm.
want wealthy people who are so close to that financial freedom. They just need a little bit of clarity and direction. And then they go out and they start building something. And I feel like I'm helping to build an army of philanthropists. I'm not directly
Mhm.
do a lot of philanthropy. I do volunteer, but I don't do it on an institutional organizational scale. I just love empowering people to be able to go out and get into their communities and give back.
I think it's also related to another thing I was thinking about as you were talking is that one of the things in developing your financial independence is oftentimes just that ability to go, you know what? I'd like to fly to Seattle to see my friends, and you have the financial ability to do that. And as opposed to, oh, I've got to wait until I can earn enough money or save enough money to do
Yeah.
that. I think that's part of it. And that freedom allows you, again, to do things which you just described, philanthropy or whatever it happens to be. You have an opportunity to do things that can be beneficial. I'm involved with Mass Ride Colorado and nine. So it's an opportunity to go, oh, I'm going to help this organization because I have time now.
Yeah.
And why do you have time? Because I'm not hustling to make all the ends meet, so to speak. Those are the benefits that you're referring to, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hustling to do
Yeah.
good rather than hustling to make ends meet.
Yeah.
And part of that do good, you have kids and now it gives you time to be a present father so that you can teach them the lessons that maybe you wish that we had learned a little bit younger in our own lives. And we can't discount the power of having that time also in our personal life because I feel like, well, that's a famous quote that no success outside the home can compensate for failure inside the home. And I really look at that quote and say to myself, like, I want to make sure that things are right here at home
Mhm.
first. I want to create productive members of society who are going to pay into the Social Security program. Maybe that's why I had so many kids. I got to keep Social Security alive. But I feel like that ability to be present for my kids and success starts at home. And we talk about getting bigger and being out in the community and starting nonprofits and helping other families do the same. But I want to help other families help their families because that grassroots hill type of mentality. I don't know. Do you ever think about it like that when you're talking about your own nuclear family?
No, I think what you're describing is that you become, this is a leadership thing. You walk the way, right? You are the model of what it is you're attempting to do. So as part of your discussions or part of how you behave at home, you're the you're walking the talk, so to speak. And so your kids are observing that. I had a weird thing with my son, injured his shoulder at a meet in Houston or in Galveston. Injured his shoulder at last event. And so he's out for 3 months, or he
Mm,
can't compete for 3 months. Maybe he can only train a couple hours a day because he can't do anything with his upper body.
no.
So he's still going to training. He performs as a leader for his kids. He works out, does what he can do. And so one of the parents said, "Oh, it's so great of you to be coming in, working out, supporting the kids." My son looked at him and said, "That's my father."
Oh,
Right? Now, all what that says to me is just what you said. That was the modeling that I have probably as a coach, but that's the modeling that he's seen is that we continue to work out, we continue to support our team, we continue to do what I would consider positive things so that people can be successful. And I do think what you described is in the home is part of that is we have to be cognizant about what we're doing. But a lot of times we're not, but we're a model
mhm.
for our children.
Yes. Yeah, and but also let's look at it from the perspective of you were my coach and my teacher, and you were able to look outside to your local community and have an impact on so many young people's lives of all the people that you've coached and all of the national teams or the Olympic teams that you've coached and just being able to say, I made it a priority to take care of home and family, my kids, and teach, and then branch out from there as you get extra time by buying back your time, by paying attention to your finances, and then the huge ripple impact that you've had. This one example, when you first introduced me to the general manager of the Austin team, and he hired me, my husband lost his job not long after, just like a couple of months after. And we were panicking because we were not financially ready to have something like that happen. And when the recruiters were talking to him, they said, "Are there other cities you'd be willing to look at besides Austin?" And he said, "My wife works in the rugby industry, which is a niche. So we would be willing to look in cities that have a rugby team so that she could continue to work if we can't stay in Austin."
Yeah.
So that led us to Salt Lake City because they're like, there's a team and the league at the time in Salt Lake City. And the recruiter put in touch with Salt Lake City people. And I immediately was in touch with the league and the team to see. And then we ended up moving to Salt Lake City and then they ended up not having a job for me. So it ended up not working out. But at the same time, I think it's funny, that conversation that we had in 2017 at that tournament and those introductions led me down the path. And what happened in Salt Lake City, because that rugby job never really materialized, I had to then think, now what am I going to do? In Salt Lake City is just an amazing real estate investing community. I think it has something like, I don't know, don't quote me on this, but the highest per capita landlords in the country. And
Mm.
so in that community and that networking, I find that these hinge moments of reconnecting with your high school rugby coach and the introductions and the networking that goes from there has changed my life in ways that you could not have predicted. I could not have predicted. And again, multi factors at play, but that chain of events that hit off is what has led us here today, and you just never
Yes.
know where that kind of networking is gonna lead.
Yeah. Okay. That is so true. And it's one of the things for me talking to young people is when you have opportunities, you have to look at taking them because you don't know where that's going to take you. And if we just keep saying no, then we just stay in, I'd say the same rut, but we just stay in rut. And that's again coming back down to taking a risk. The young people, when we decided that we were going to recruit former NFL players or people who've been cut from NFL to play rugby, because our thought process was they're 22, we can teach them how to play rugby and they can be quality rugby player as they get older and represent the U.S. The one key factor there is all of those young men had to take a risk because what we're saying is we have an opportunity for you. It's not what you're used to. It's not playing
Mhm.
football, etc. You have to give up your goal of playing in the NFL, XFL, what have you, to do this. But if you do, this is opportunities they have because rugby is not just a game, it's a community.
It
And
is.
that community allows you different kind of opportunities that are beyond playing on the field. So those players all have to take a risk. And that's really what you're describing. You go to Utah and if this didn't work out, I have to dive into something else. And then that becomes an opportunity. One of the things I say that if I'm talking rugby to number 10s is when you look in here, those are threats and these are opportunity.
Yeah.
Okay. So you have to be aware of the threats, but then look for the opportunity. And I think life is that way, right?
Yeah.
All
Absolutely.
right. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I loved what you mentioned about the community of rugby. I've never seen any other sport. I've tried a lot of different sports. I'm not good at any of them, but they're fun to play. They're fun to try. But there's something about that rugby community. And that's probably why I took that risk of working for the Austin team. I think he offered me like 20 bucks an hour. And I was like, oh man, I was definitely thinking more at some of my other pursuits, but I just really loved the community. And I think that it led me down a path that ended up much better for me in the long run than if I'd said, no, I can't do this for $20 an hour. It's being open to that and open to the networking and the people that I was going to meet in a very different community than ours in it. So that's the point. I guess that's the point of the show, really, is networking, communicate, help people get out in your community, think about planning for yourself, helping your family, but then open up your mind and be open to things and get out in the community. So, in that vein, how do people get a hold of you after the show?
Oh, yeah. How do they get hold of me? Specifically, my business is actually, I call it basically leadership coaching because that's among the other things I do.
Mhm.
And I'm looking at helping young people. I also do some bigger things for leadership coaching, but they can contact me. Do you want me to give them that?
Yeah, go
M?
ahead. We'll put it on the
Uh,
screen and we'll also put it in the show notes for those who are listening to that.
Okay. It's mblockster@gmail.com. And the phone number is 303-472-7395. So my quote company is, if you will, is Red for Leadership Coaching.
Perfect. And I think I'll just wrap it up with something you said right at the very beginning when you were working with troubled students. And you said, I was teaching them about respect, but you went in a direction I was not expecting. You were teaching them that you respected them, that you respected their ability to learn, you respected them as humans. And I was expecting it to be more like the coach, you respect the coach, but you really captured the essence of who you are and what you're doing because you extend that respect to people first as humans and as capable people like your son. Even if you're injured, no matter where you are, you have something to contribute and you have something that you can do and something that you can build. And then when you extended that respect to them, that was when you developed close relationships where you could help them help themselves. So thank you for sharing that message.
Yeah.
There's some really good stuff out of this one. I appreciate you taking the time and with my audience and I hope you have a lovely breakfast with your wife and tell her I said hello.
Thank you so much, Emma. This has been quite fun, actually. And
Yeah,
like,
podcasting is so honestly, if I could just podcast, I would probably just do that.
oh,
It's
excellent. Good.
if you listener want to get in touch with me, you can jump on my calendar for free, 30 minutes. You can talk about whatever you want. If I have a solution for a problem that you have, I will let you know. And if I don't, I will introduce you to somebody who can help you because everybody's in a different position. We talked about our ideal clients here. And if you fit into one of those categories, great. But if you don't, we can help you figure out who we can introduce you to that you do fit into their ideal friend, networking, customer target. And just by meeting people and going down the path, figuring out where you
Yeah.
are. Yep.
Yeah.
Investwithemma.com. And I would love to hear about your own plans and tell me about your dreams for your next passive income adventure. And I'll do everything I can to help you achieve it.
Thank you so much, Emma.
Thank you.
This
See you next week.